The era of left-wing irrationality is fully upon us now. There's no other way to say it. You can't argue or debate these people because nothing matters. It's just all, what do they feel like at any point in time? What do they want to say? What makes them feel good or righteous, or what scratches their itch, their desire for sanctimony? That is where we are. As a society, that is what is going on right now in the United States of America, day in and day out. And I can just play countless examples of this for you. One of the problems we have is the public discussion around all these things now is so much, so separate, so balkanized in the media. You never have, if any of these MSNBC or CNN anchors, for example, had someone like me to debate them on any of these issues, and I mean me and the anchor, not what they love to do is have a conservative on with an anchor and also an opposing voice, and then it's a 2-on-1. They get talk. No. Me and the anchor, their opinion anchor or their journalist anchors, whatever. They would get absolutely smoked, and they know it. They would get crushed. And that's why, that's why there's no downside to the crazy ideas. In fact, the crazy ideas get you more and more likes. One of the troubling things I've seen happening is that people are growing in influence for spreading falsehoods and lies that last months, perhaps years. Russia collusion is a great example. There are so many people right now who have become household names on the left from their appearances on MSNBC, from editorials in the Washington Post and whatever, who were wrong at every stage of the Russia collusion story, at every stage of it, were lying about things, and they pay no price. In fact, it's the opposite. They benefit dramatically from the falsehoods. And now you see the same thing as we go into COVID and then also these protests. I don't have to respect these protesters yelling stuff. I don't have to agree with them. I don't have to bend the knee. No, I do not. But that's now, oh my gosh, if you don't do that all the time, oh my gosh, you got big problems. They're going to come after you. I was really pleased. I finally smacked around in rhetorical terms one of these accounts that just goes after conservatives and tries to get them deplatformed and tries to get them fired. Oh, and I love it. I get so many these days because I'm just going wild on Twitter. I'm just lighting it up. The Buckster is in a tweet free fire zone. The president retweeted me 7 times earlier this week. I've probably been retweeted by the president this year, I don't know, 20 or 30 times at this point, maybe a little more. But that's because I'm just letting it rip. I'm just telling people what's true as I see it, and I don't care. The libs are all, little lib ankle biters coming after me all the time. I don't care. I love when they do these little, you've been reported for violation of terms of service. Bring it, libs. Violation of terms of service. What, first of all, I haven't violated anything, but they're just so upset because what I say is true. And there's no real counter argument. So it's, why don't you care about racism? I do care about racism. Shut up. I'm not even talking about racism. Stop. They try to force you into these paradigms where you're just talking about something that has nothing to do with the issue at hand, and where they feel like they have some borrowed moral high ground from other people who have actually made the argument before them. It's crazy out there right now. I've never seen anything quite like it. Oh, but I did smack around one of these accounts, and all it does is target conservatives, try to create an outrage campaign. Media Matters has been coming after too. They're the worst people on the planet. Media Matters. If it's between Media Matters and like terrorists in a training camp in Afghanistan, I'm not sure who's worse. It's a close call. But the Media Matters has been coming after me. This other organization that all it is just an account for trying to get boycott campaigns going against conservatives. And I completely just smacked him around on Twitter. And God bless him, my man Jesse Kelly, my main man Jesse Kelly, and my main man Raheem Kassam also jumped in the fray, and were like, it was nice. It was like alley-oops and dunks, and then running in front of their bench and saying, "That's right, I stole your girlfriend too." I mean, it was fun because they're bad people and they're hurting the country and they have no ethics and they don't care about the pain, the real loss that they cause when they get people shut down, when they deplatform them. They don't engage in the battlefield of ideas. They're just always looking to do assassinations, back in the civilian world, right? They're behind, way behind the battle lines. They're always trying to do stuff behind the scenes to ruin people. I won't name them on the air. I don't want to give them the satisfaction of being named across the country on this show. But this is really what we're up against now. Because people sometimes ask, Buck, why don't you have liberals on the show to debate? What am I gonna say? How am I gonna have a debate with a liberal on this stuff when they're living in a fantasy land? Here are some facts that the left has no. And remember, left and Democrats same. So Democrats, we can call them that, call them the left. I think of the left as inherently, reckless, mob-like, authoritarian, and for me, the left is a clear pejorative. I mean, it's a put down. The left is bad. So that's why when I refer to Democrats, the left, it's kind of the same deal. But if I had a conversation with anybody from the left right now, and I mean, I can't even take all this stuff on social media. Oh, I'm putting people that I like, people that I think are, pleasant and fun to be around. They're putting up all these black squares and this and that and solidarity. And I'm like, solidarity with what? With what? I mean, what exactly do we think is going to come from this? If this is about the incident, let's talk about the incident. Guy's already being prosecuted. He's going to go to prison probably for the rest of his life. Everyone thought it was horrible. Bad things happen. What else do you want? Oh, no, it's about all this systemic bias. Well, okay, the systemic bias the quote systemic bias is that on a per capita, per arrest, really, basis, white people are more likely to get killed by cops than black people. Oh, then this turns into on a per capita basis, there are far more African Americans arrested by the police than there are, again, proportionally speaking, than there are non-African Americans and comparatively to the white population. And to that, I just say, okay, so what are the answers that are offered up by the left to fix that? What would they like to see? Because not enforcing the law is not an option, right? Stealing, theft, looting, murder, rape, all these things, these are universal laws applicable at all times to all people. We don't change that. And the left has started to chip away at that already with, looting is not really that bad. Excuse me? How far do you think the leap really is from minimizing the destruction and the pain and the lawlessness of looting to justifying an act of mob violence against somebody that was in the name of this movement? I see it as a very small leap. It has not openly, not that I can think of, been made quite yet, but certainly a lot of provocation and assaults and violence against police is just explained and swept away. You had cops shot and stabbed last night in New York. People are afraid here to go, and legitimately afraid to go at it. This is not like a COVID fear thing of, if I breathe in the air and there's someone 100 feet away, maybe the virus will, like a heat-seeking missile, go up my nose. And it's not how it works. We all knew that, but it's not what they would say to us. There is real fear here at night because there is anarchy on the streets and the criminals feel like they have free reign. And that's wrong and that's dangerous. And the left does not see that as a problem. I mean, blowhard morons like Chris Cuomo are saying, the protests are not the problem. The riots and the looting are a problem, and they are feeding directly off of the protest. They are sharing the narrative of the protest. And in many cases, the protest is really the symbiotic organism, so to speak. There's a synergy between the rioters, the looters, and the protest. And in some cases, people are, wearing both hats, so to speak. Oh, I'm a protester. Oops, now I'm turning into a rioter. and we're supposed to show this movement respect. What did the last Black Lives Matter movement? What did that accomplish? And remember that what was central, and all the things that I'm saying to you, you know what I'm saying is true, which is one of the reasons why I don't have some huge legacy media cable channel that's putting me on, night after night to read off a script and have people picking out my suits for me and, making sure that everything looks perfect. No. Why do we have a show that's growing, a podcast that is almost quadrupled in size in just the last 6 months? Why is all this happening? Well, it's because I tell you things that are true, and I analyze things in a way that is based in fact and reality, and that's in short supply these days. There are very few people and very few places where that's actually being done. And I know that. And so I feel, honestly, a solemn responsibility to continue to do this. And every time I say this to you, every time I go into these issues and say, even, I will not kneel, you have no idea how much backlash I get from that. And it's not just professional, it's personal too. People that, know me that will write to me on Instagram, what do you mean you won't kneel? What kind of stuff is this that you're saying? Don't you, and then they just spew some platitude. Don't you oppose systemic racism? Yeah, don't you oppose mass murder? I mean, sure, don't you oppose chopping someone's head off for fun with an axe? I mean, what kind of stupid questions are these? Of course. But what also is, I oppose the concept of systemic racism. What is systemic racism? Remember, they've also transitioned the terminology so that there's this more inclusive definition that is used now by the left of white supremacy. You'll often hear that, white supremacy, which used to be reserved for people who thought that whites were supreme to other races. They were neo-Nazis. They had, swastikas tattooed on their faces and so on and so forth. And that's a workable and true definition, right? That makes sense. Yeah, those are white supremacists. The things that are being called tools of white supremacy right now. I mean, the police are called a tool of white supremacy. So are the police neo-Nazis now? Does anyone have to argue, or rather, does anyone have to take the debate position that is being advocated by these protest movements and actually defend it? Or is it just the protest gets to say it, and anybody who challenges the ideas coming out of these protests is just shouted down as being a racist, even though there's no effort to engage in the idea? They claim they want a dialogue, but really they want to give us a lecture. That's what's going on right now. That's why you're being told to bend the knee. That's why you're being told that you have to submit. And it's very troubling because this is not going to stop, especially with the Trump election looming. And I have to say, the only real measure of justice that we will get, and this is a big burden to put on President Trump himself and on the administration. The only way that we achieve justice is if Trump gets reelected, because they will completely, that's what all of these shrill, dishonest, screaming, angry, lying libs out there, whether it's in the media or the people, the activist coordinators of these things that are they're separate from the facts and, we're just representing anti-racism. Okay, everyone thinks racism is bad. So what exactly are you trying to accomplish here? All of that, all those people that are out there in the media and taking these positions, the best thing that could happen to them and to this country is that they have to deal with 4 more years of Trump, because they've earned it. They deserve that. After the Russia collusion, and remember when they tried to impeach the president? Remember when it was a national security threat and that complete wimp, that just piece of moldy milquetoast, Mitt Romney, was like, I think I have to vote against the president on this one. I cannot believe I voted for that guy. I didn't have a choice, but I guess I did have a choice, but it wasn't a good one. They did that. They've tried all these different schemes, all these coup efforts to get rid of the president of the United States. And what are we left with at the end of the day? They're just insane. There is no rationality, no fairness, no decency in the arguments that are being made. What they said last week doesn't matter this week. What they made you do last week might change this week. It doesn't. We are at the whims. I mean, the Democrats are the mob, and we are now increasingly, especially in major cities, at the whims of this insane mob. And I'm going to keep fighting. I will keep my shield high. But I don't know if we're going to win this one, at least in the cities. I certainly hope we win the national election in the fall. But I don't know. New York, D.C., these places may be lost. Lost.
In a lot of ways, what has happened over the last several weeks is challenges and structural problems here in the United States have been thrown into high relief. They're the outcomes not just of the immediate moments in time, but they're the result of a long history of slavery and Jim Crow and redlining and institutionalized racism that too often have been the plague, this original sin of our society. And in some ways, as tragic as these past few weeks have been, as difficult and scary and uncertain as they've also been an incredible opportunity for people to be awakened to some of these underlying trends. And they offer an opportunity for us to all work together to tackle them, to take them on, to change.
A classic Obama, just speaking, and then you're like, well, okay, well, what is really being said here? And in the end, you get to people are waking up to this. Waking up to what? Well, what are we waking up to exactly? That there is racism in America, that there's a history of racism in America. Everybody knows this. So we're waking up to it? This one incident is indicative of race relations in the entire country all the time? It's just not true. That's just not true. But then the even more amorphous part of this discussion now is, okay, well, what would they like us to do about it? What do Democrats, what do the left want in response to this? People who say police reform, they are calling for defunding police. A senior aide to Hillary Clinton, I'm forgetting the guy's name, but he's one of those Clinton hangers-on, just a complete jackass. He's calling for defunding the police. People repeat this like this is intelligent. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And anyone who says it, I don't care who they are, is being an idiot.
Very interesting with these liberal mayors, liberal Democrats, and governors, how they're tough as hell on keeping people locked up in their houses. But when it comes to ending the crime and those stores being broken into and the looting, and by the way, people being hit over the back of the head, the man in Dallas that was kicked unmercifully, I never saw anything like it. He's being kicked and beaten up and probably going to die. You look at all of this stuff, the woman who gets hit by a 2x4, nobody ever mentions that. But you look at what goes on. But the liberal mayors, they keep you locked up. But when it comes to the looting and everything, they're very weak on crime.
God bless Trump. Can you imagine if we had some just complete moron Democrat as president right now as this stuff is going on? Is saying, the protesters, their voices are being heard, and we need to have a national conversation, and let's all come together and just let's allow them to tell us what we need to do to make them happy so that we heal. I'm like, okay, which protesters and what's the are we? Is it the Antifa protesters? Is it the female white liberal women's march protesters who are like, woo, another protest? Is it the Black Lives Matter protesters? Who do we listen to in this scenario? Who gets to dictate the future of this country to us? I'm just wondering. I'm wondering if we can get answers to any of this. But Trump recognizes what we all recognize, that this isn't really about having serious conversations about anything. This is just an emotional outburst, an expression of rage and resentment against Trump, against all kinds of stuff. And just people who are upset. Look, I also believe that we are running right now an unprecedented experiment in mass lockdown. We have been running it in a country where there's already a lot of stuff going on that I think is damaging to our mental health. And I think that you have a lot of people who don't realize how much psychological damage has been done to them from the lack of human contact, the loss of jobs, the loss of a sense of future, and they're lashing out and they're acting out. Now, this is by no means, I don't excuse anything. If you break property, you break the law, you should be punished. But I'm just saying this is some scary stuff that's going on. You know, this is the kind of moment that can shift the tectonic plates in society in ways that right now we can't even fully foresee. But this pretense that you hear, you just hear it constantly from the libs that, oh, this is going to lead to progress, or you know, now we're finally going to end systemic racism. You know, oh, how? What would end? I mean, this is why I also think that we always need to keep in the back of our minds what really are the demands here. How do we end systemic racism? Are there parts of this conversation we're not allowed to have? Because I need to know what is supposed to happen so that we can finally say we have ended. If the answer is we're never going to end systemic racism, does that then give the agitators around this issue the right to shut down society, to loot, to riot, to do all these things whenever they want? Is that the bargain that we've signed up for? The president's right that this is a mess, and it's not a mess that he has any control of. Remember, this was a cop in a liberal city, in a liberal state, with a liberal chief of police and a liberal mayor, and but somehow it's everything that they don't like is Trump's fault. He just becomes the avatar for all their hatred and grievance mongering. Here's Trump saying about Biden, because Joe Biden's here now, and he's really he's gonna just stare Trump in the eye, and he's gonna demand a Frankfurter with extra mustard on it, and here he is, play 13.
Well, I heard Biden talking about systemic racism in the police department today. And I said, a very simple question. He's been there for 43 years. Why didn't he do something about it? I've only been doing this for 3.5 years. He's been there for 44 years. He was there 8 years as vice president. He had plenty of time. I mean, he was taking a lot of vacations, taking it easy, sending his son over to China to pick up $1.5 billion, sending him to Ukraine where he was paid $83,000 a month and $3 million up front or something. I would tell you, why he had plenty of time. Why wouldn't he do this? This is Sleepy Joe. But now he's talking about systemic racism in the police department. Why wouldn't he have done something about it? He had all the time. So now he says, I'm going to stop. Well, he's there 43 years. He was a senator, in all fairness. That's a very big position. You could do what you want to do. But then he was vice president for 8 years. He hasn't done anything except things that were bad for the black population. Very bad. African-American population was treated very badly by Biden. He didn't know it. And he doesn't know it now, honestly, because I don't think he knows where he is.
If he was if you're looking at Biden's record, he was a tough on crime guy back when that was politically useful for him. Signed the crime bill. We all know this, or pushed the crime bill through the Senate. Was a sponsor of it. And Biden, when it was useful for him, was all, lock up anybody, lock up the lawbreakers, put any thugs out there in prison. That was Joe Biden. And now he's Mr. Wokeness. Now he's all about being woke and telling us that somehow he's going to make things better. I mean, that's really a big part of all this. Just the laughable pretense that Joe Biden is going to somehow make things make it. But they also have this return now. We're hearing Trump. We went through the whole COVID thing, which was a perfect. If you're looking to institute a fascist state, that would have been. And some authoritarian Democrats at the state level did start to really feel their power fully and start to abuse it in ways that I think was predictable, but unfortunately we didn't push back against enough. But here you go. Here's Schumer saying that the real threat we got riots happening, businesses burning, can't go out in the streets at night in New York City, and I'm sure a whole bunch of other places too. The real threat is Trump's fascism. Play 6.
And whether on this or on doing a robust COVID bill, which would help deal with some of the economic inequalities that people of color face, we see them not doing anything. Last week, a few days ago, McConnell, when listed what we should do this month, didn't even talk about COVID and didn't even talk about the HEROES bill. They're derelict in their responsibilities, and we need them now more than ever, like we need General Mattis and Admiral Mullen to stand up to a president who is a would-be dictator. He knows no limits. He only knows limits when people put things in his way. Mattis put a big symbolic barrier in his way and bolstered, I think, the instincts of some of the good people in the military who say we can't be used like this.
Oh, okay, Chuck Schumer. So the answer here is what exactly? Senator Cotton, he doesn't say that. He just, Trump's bad, Trump's evil. These people, they don't even make an argument. Senator Cotton has a piece in the New York Times on the op-ed page saying send in the troops, that we should do this, that this needs to happen, that the federal government needs to assist with active duty military in cities that cannot handle this right now. I mean, New York is New York is the worst hit by coronavirus. New York is the worst hit by the looting and the riots. I mean, I can tell you this, people are leaving this place. They're never coming back. They're never coming back. Producer Mark and I are going to start sending each other Zillow links with houses in Tampa and Naples and Pensacola. What do you think, Producer Mark?
Absolutely, but are we going to live together?
No, but I'm just saying, like, to get a sense of the market.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. We could probably get like a Freedom Hut, and we set up like a house for you, and like a compound. But I don't know. You and Mrs. Mark probably want your own domicile, so I get it. The reality is that the city is not going to come back because we've all realized that the politics of this place have turned into it's so toxic and people are so absurd that the pain and the learning that should be the painful lessons that should be learned from this place are not being learned. They're just doubling down on more of the insanity. Maybe if we defund cops, things will be better here. How could any serious person say this? They're completely out of their minds. But what's great is you got the New York Times, which is the high temple of liberalism, as people call it, the gray lady. The New York Times has a number of staffers who reacted to a sitting United States senator and military veteran saying that the president should use his authority under federal law to send in military forces to places where there is an unwillingness or an inability to protect people in this country. The president, that the president should do that. And the response from the New York Times, from a number of New York Times writers, journalists, and everything, is to suggest that this is advocating for violence against black New York Times staffers. That's what they're saying. The editorial is violence. Looting is not violence. And this is according to the same New York Times staffer. You cannot make this stuff up. Looting, not really violence. Editorial saying the military should be deployed to protect people, that's as bad as violence. What? First of all, it's on the opposing editorial page. Right? You have the editorial for the people that work for the paper, and then you have the op-ed. Traditionally it was the opposite page, and it represents a wide range of opinions, and we all know this. And this is Oh, no, can't represent that opinion, which a majority, a solid majority, I think it's 58% in the polls that I saw, a solid majority of the American people agree with. But it's so evil that people are outraged. And then the New York Times is having this whole writing a piece on, we're just showing that there's an outrage, and the editorial page director is like, hey, guys, don't be so mad at me. And it's really like our quote, elite liberal institutions are now run by a bunch of petty, self-indulgent, whiny sixth graders. That's what's going on. That's the truth. The Washington Post, the New York Times, oh my gosh, we can't handle this thing that's happened. I don't know. I mean, I have days. I used to think, I'll tell you this. I used to think, maybe there's a life that one could lead that I'm not constantly in this fight in this way, because it becomes like, look, I love the fight. I relish it for the most part, but some days I get exhausted with it, and I think, what is wrong with people? How can they be so crazy? I wish we could have debates over things where there's real complexity. I thought when I got into politics, when I was a political science, undergrad student at Amherst, and things like the death penalty. There's interesting in both sides. There's nuance and there's real debate. We're debating whether or not people can just pick a store at random, break in all the windows, loot it, light it on fire, and whether that's like a bad thing. Because that's how insane the left is now. And I just think, can I get away from these crazy leftists? Is there is there a way in society where I could just find some other? The problem that I see, though, is that we're all in this fight now. You are in this fight. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a farmer or a school teacher, a cop, an investment banker, a doc, whatever you do. Corporate America's completely overrun with this stuff. Oh my gosh, I feel so much better, knowing that Nabisco is going to put out a statement on how we stand with Black Lives Matter protesters. Who gives a? But everyone's doing it. Oh, corporate America is all, we stand in solidarity with. Notice that no one ever stands in solidarity with conservative causes. We're half the country. What's up with that? No corporate. Somehow we have seeded the Academy. We have seeded Hollywood. But it's really because liberalism is an invasive species of the brain, right? An invasive species. Here's an example. There's a frog in Florida now that if you touch it, it's actually a toad. If you touch it, I forget what it's called. It spews out this poison behind its eyes. It's not going to hurt you as a person, but it'll kill your dog if your dog licks it or eats it. And it also kills a lot of other local frog species. Liberalism, leftism is like that in institutions, and it's like that in people's minds. Once you adopt liberalism in the mind, it just eats the other ideas and principles that you have, and it completely takes over. And once people who are leftists get into institutions, they can't handle non-leftists. They have to crowd them out. So leftism, liberalism is an improper term for them, but the left mindset, the left ideology in this country is an invasive species. It really is. It ruins all debate. It ruins all institutions because it has to be absolute. It has to take over. It has no other way of existing. Oh, I've got another example for you of a debate I never thought we'd be having or never hear it occurring. Here is a woman in D.C. yelling at women who have volunteered to help with graffiti cleanup on a federal building. That's right. The people cleaning up their graffiti now get yelled at. Play clip 3.
Why are you guys removing Black Lives Matter's graffiti?
We're just trying to take care of it. Yeah, we tried over there and it wasn't coming off. It's still in what was coming off.
But why do you want that to come off?
Well, because this is a federal building. Yeah, it's just a vandalism.
But so you don't care about Black lives then?
Not at all. That's not at all what we're saying.
That's what this...
We certainly do care about Black lives.
Not enough to leave up a message.
You don't disagree with the message, ma'am. It's just on the building. We're just trying to clean it.
Right. not a great way to use your white privilege, ladies. Not a great. That's disgusting.
Yeah, the woman speaking there is a moron, obviously, but I'm sure probably has a high paid job at the State Department, sitting around at a desk doing nothing, talking about how she's saving the world. That's what happens in D.C. A lot of worthless libs who have ensconced themselves in the bureaucracy. But yeah, that's right. This is what I've been telling you. Accept our vandalism, or you don't care about Black lives. This is the argument. That's really take a knee, do what we say, do jumping jacks, and apologize for your white privilege while you're doing them, or you don't care about Black lives. That is what this movement out there is saying over and over again.